I'm Rabbi Devorah Lynn, and I'm the co-founder with Mirala Goldsmith of Jewish Earth Alliance in 2019, where we began collecting handwritten letters from people around the nation and hand delivering them to the offices in the halls of power in Congress on Capitol Hill. But here we are on the internet, thanks to the epidemic, and we are going coast to coast. So welcome to you all. As we all, do we have everyone in from the waiting room? I think so. Okay.
Yes, yes, we
So,
do.
so please sign into the chat if you can. Where are you calling from? Your the organization you're related to, and if you have one, and tell me. Let's know what was the last time it rained where you are, or if you're getting lots of rain, how many inches was the last storm? So we'll get a picture of the weather across the country. We always, Jewish Earth Alliance has been teaching thousands of people how to form relationships with their members of Congress and how to let them know how we feel about climate legislation. So we always begin our meetings with an inspiration. And this evening, Rob Katz is going to do just that. He is a retired lawyer and a singer-songwriter based in Oakland, California, and he has released
Released
3 albums
album
of
of
original.
original.
One in 2008, an album called Renewal, and 2 albums released in 2024. The World's Greatest Peace Song and Other Songs Almost as Good, and Don't Believe Everything You Think, and Other Musical Observations. Rob has performed all around San Francisco Bay, and he's written over a dozen award-winning Purim spiels. Rob is also an active participant in Bay Area action groups, including the Jewish Earth Alliance. Rob, good evening. It's great to have you. The mic is all yours.
Thank you, Devorah. So I'm going to sing a couple of songs, and they have choruses, so I hope you all sing along. Of course, you have to sing muted because of the limitations of Zoom, but here we go. For the sake of our children's children, and for our own sake too, we gotta keep the planet from getting too hot. That's the necessary thing to do. Well, the biggest cause of global warming is burning oil and coal. Stop being fools, for fossil fuels should be our biggest goal. So keep it in the ground, yes, keep it in the ground. Burning oil and coal takes a terrible toll, so keep it in the ground. To all the big corporations who own the wells and mines, let's demand a new business plan while we still have the time. They keep on making profits while the planet's on the brink of ruin. When are they gonna pay for all the harm that they've been doing? So keep it in the ground, yes, keep it in the ground. Burning oil and coal takes a terrible toll, so keep it in the ground. There's lots of paths to a better future under the sun, and all that we really need is the will to get it done. Now the miners and petroleum workers, they're the ones who made the wheels go round. It isn't right that they should pay the price when demand keeps going down. Let's treat those miners like heroes, petroleum workers too. We must petition for a just transition, that's the least we can do. So keep it in the ground, yes, keep it in the ground. Burning oil and coal takes a terrible toll, so keep it in the ground. We've got all the technology for green energy today, We need politicians to get in gear instead of getting in the way. Well, some folks say it's hopeless, it's not gonna change. But the question's whether we can come together, this world to rearrange. Let's make the earth a good place, this planet to renew. Can we refrain from short-term gain and take the longer view? So keep it in the ground, yes, keep it in the ground. Burning oil and coal takes a terrible toll, so keep it in the ground, yes, keep it in the ground.
Great, great, Rob. I hope to be singing the chorus to that song at the next demonstration. Am I unmuted? Yes. Okay, great. It was giving me mixed messages. Thank you very much, Rob. That was a great start to our meeting tonight, and a sentiment carried by all of us here. So I hope to hear some more of your songs in the near future. Thank you very much for your participation. So our co-chair, Phyllis Blumberg, will give us a report tonight and update us on our wonderful and constructive Tisha B'Av Lobby Day of last month.
Okay, thank you all for coming tonight, and I'm welcoming a lot of faces that I know and see, and I remember from Lobby Day. At any rate, we had a wonderful, successful Lobby Day in July, and it continues. The last meeting is actually tomorrow. We will be celebrating in September. 342 people registered, but we believe that about 12 people lobbied but did not register. So if you know of anybody who did not register, please let them know or let us know so we can get their contact information so we can continuously invite them to come to our things. 28 states, 53 meetings, 32 Democrats, 21 Republicans. So we are really going coast to coast, as Devorah always says. But we want to improve what we do, so we welcome your feedback. There's a 2-minute survey, and if somebody could put it in the chat, that would be wonderful. It's basically a real easy thing to give us feedback, any ideas. We do take your ideas seriously, and we have changed because of what people have said. So we want to hear from you. And is it in the chat? Otherwise, I can put it in later. So we had some impact of our efforts. About half of the staff that we were talking to did not know anything about the ban on the roadless amendment. So with our discussion, they're now aware of it. And just very recently, this has become even more of a relevant topic because just recently, the president has decided that he's going to propose a rollback on the roadless conservation rule. So public comments will be welcomed soon, and you all are well briefed on this. So if you can make a comment, that would be wonderful. We also learned that bipartisan pairing is required on the weather research bill. This is why there were very few people supporting it. But we are optimistic that we had some impact on some Republican senators who felt that this was a good bill. It's bipartisan. It's got bipartisan sponsorship, as it has to be. We also learned, to our great relief, that the immunity bill for polluters is probably not moving out of committee, so we don't have to worry about that one. We just wanted to let you know about that, which is certainly good news. And we want to thank our 65 amazing co-sponsors this year. That's the highest number we've ever had of co-sponsors. And if try to fill it all on one screen, it's hard to see, I know, but that's our list. And we now have people beyond our steering committee who've done an amazing amount of work. We had a great intern, and she's coming back in December. Our data management is Bill Witherspoon, who used to be a steering committee member, but now manages the data for us skillfully. Deb now Crane does outreach to organizations and she and Marilla brought in those 60-some sponsors. We've done much more social media this year, thanks to Grace, our intern, and Morgan Long. The Reform rabbis in small Jewish communities participated in numbers along with their congregants, and we also want to thank our co-sponsors. So we will have a celebration at our next meeting, talking more about Lobby Day, and we want to go from strength to strength as we have been doing. Put it on your calendar now. Tentatively, we're going to be January 27th, 2027. That's a typo. January 27 to 2027. And as I said, we'll be celebrating in September. So thank you all for lobbying, and we're going to be in for a really wonderful speaker tonight.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Phyllis, for that update. Yes, it was a great day that continues. As you said, the last meeting's tomorrow. So now I'd like to turn over the mic to Jack Gorman from our steering committee, and he will introduce our speaker for this evening. Jack?
Hi, and thank you. So I watched Reverend Fletcher Harper in action for the first time at an organizing meeting for the first People's Climate March in New York City back in 2014. He galvanized the audience of climate activists with his vision of a multi-faith movement to pursue an end to fossil fuel company exploitation and for climate justice. He so impressed me that I joined his organization, Greenfaith, and can today consider him not only a visionary leader, but my friend. Fletcher Harper is a graduate of Princeton University and of the Union Theological Seminary. He served as a parish priest for 10 years and in leadership positions in the Episcopal Church before becoming Greenfaith's executive director. He has helped spearhead the faith-based fossil fuel divestment movement, mobilized tens of thousands of people of faith for climate marches and public actions, and built Greenfaith from a New Jersey-focused group into a global organization. He co-founded SHINE, an international campaign that brings religious leaders together to achieve universal access to clean energy, and the Interfaith Rainforest Initiative. Now, recently, a Greenfaith board of directors colleague of mine was organizing an executive committee lunch with Fletcher. He kindly remembered that I would prefer a kosher restaurant and asked an observing friend of his for a recommendation in New Jersey. The friend asked, "Are you taking your rabbi to lunch at this kosher restaurant?" And Phil replied, "No, we are taking our minister to lunch." In a nutshell, that highlights Fletcher Harper's commitment to an ecumenical religious approach to climate advocacy and action. It is my pleasure to introduce to Jewish Earth Alliance the Reverend Fletcher Harper.
Jack, that's an extraordinarily kind intro. And I would say, in addition to commitment to interfaith work, it also shows a commitment to good corned beef. So that's another piece of the picture. And it's really great to be with you all. And while I can't see her on the screen right now, I want to give a big and grateful shout out to my longtime friend, Mirala Goldsmith, who Rabbi Devorah referred to and who's been a friend and colleague for, I don't know, Mirala, I think it's close to 20 years, but we're not counting precisely. But it's really a privilege to be with you all. And I was asked to speak tonight about a campaign that we are deeply committed to, whose aim is to repeal H.R. 1, the inappropriately named One Big Beautiful Bill Act. And I wanted to start about why we're doing that. And I'll say more about we, because Mirala is on the steering committee of the campaign, and we're grateful for Jewish Earth Alliance's leadership in it. But I want to talk for a few minutes about why this target in a time full of so many. Over a year ago, I had been speaking, as I do, to a number of different religious leaders, and essentially saying, and this is a condensed version of the conversation or the exchange, would you do some work on climate change with us now? And the response that I got with varying levels of directness was, I care about climate change, but I also care about hunger, and I care about migrants, and I care about healthcare, and I care about fair tax policy. And the implicit message was, come to us with a campaign that gives us a chance to bring all of these things together in this unbelievably fraught moment that we're in now. Several colleagues and I were talking, and the campaign was born out of the recognition that HR1, the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill Act, had a uniquely negative impact across all of those areas. I'm going to talk for 10 minutes or so about impacts on climate, but it was responsible for cuts in SNAP benefits. It revoked a number of healthcare subsidies that had been in place, which has subsequently led to several million people already losing healthcare coverage. And already there have been reports coming out around the 1-year anniversary of the bill that 5 million or more people in the US, including 1 million children, have lost access to SNAP benefits. It multiplied the budget of ICE by a factor of more than 6. One of the reasons that ICE is running around all over the place and causing the grave harm that they are is that they've got more money than they know what to do with. And this bill is responsible for that. The bill also put into permanent position, or so-called permanent position, highly regressive tax cuts that were an enormous benefit to the wealthiest among us, and that disproportionately disadvantaged those who were poorer or less fortunate economically. And when we think about the impacts of this bill, I would defy anybody to find a religion that says that any of that is okay. It just isn't. And to us, it reflected something that we needed to be speaking out against. Religious groups around the country lobbied quite hard against the bill at the time of its passage. We think that conversation shouldn't end, and that there should be a very loud call for the bill's repeal, and at the very least for the reinstatement of what had been in place previously, both in terms of healthcare and SNAP benefits, and a reduced ICE budget, and all of the different climate provisions that I'll talk about in a little bit. I want to be clear that we live in a moment where a lot of different things need to happen for the world and for this country to get back on track. But I would venture to say that repealing this bill would be a highly effective way to disable an awful lot of the negative impact that the current administration is having. I also think that it's something that is very campaignable. And as Mirala may have shared with you all in Jewish Earth Alliance, we have a national coalition that's growing of more than 20 national religious groups representing over 4.5 million members who are backing this campaign. And we're raising awareness. We're starting to see different congressional representatives speak out, either about repealing the bill entirely or certainly about repealing parts of it. And we think that this is a very important rallying cry as we move into the coming year. Or the coming 2 years, because realistically, the next time that there can be action on this is when there's a new Congress and when there's a new president in the White House. So with that said, what I thought I would do would be to give an overview of the negative impacts on climate change of this legislation. And I'm glad to share the presentation, and we'll send it to Mirala after the webinar. So let me see if we can get started here. Proper. Okay. So let's get the. So I think the single most important thing to recognize about HR1 is that it fundamentally reversed the direction of the country's climate policy. And it did that both by cutting dramatically support for the things that all of us have been working hard for over the last 10 to 15 years, So it cut support for renewable energy, electric vehicles, energy efficient homes and buildings. It also dramatically increased various forms of government support for fossil fuel extraction, especially on public lands where it made that extraction much less expensive and much easier. And this is going to result in significantly more climate pollution. And this 315 to 574 million ton figure is the annual emissions of 75 to 137 million gasoline powered cars, which is a third to more than a half of the entire US passenger vehicle fleet right now. So this is a big deal. It's not a tweak around the margins. It's a fundamental shift. The IRA, the Inflation Reduction Act, was successfully bending the country's emissions curve downwards. It was going to get us 32 to 42% below 2005 emission levels. And this was, while it was still going to be a stretch, this was still on track towards net zero by, shortly after 2050. Without the IRA, without the IRA, before HR1 and without the IRA, that was a 7 to 10% increase in positive emissions reductions. So you go from 32 to 45% downwards, and I think the line to pay attention to, here is the bottom one. It basically worsens the results of national emissions 7 to 12% compared to what we would have had with the IRA. So it essentially wipes out all of the gains, all of those hard-won gains. So that's a very, very big deal. And it simply, with this new legislation, it makes it impossible for the US to play any kind of leadership role. And really, this HR1 turned the US in one fell swoop from a climate leader into a climate laggard. Now, I want to be clear, this wasn't the only bad thing for the climate that the current administration has done, but it was by far the single most consequential. And we're obviously, through Greenfaith, going to be calling not only for the repeal of HR1, but for all of the negative climate executive orders. And I'm sure, knowing your all's good work, that you're already on that case. With clean electricity, renewables, there's a loss of long-term certainty. When we started Greenfaith in New Jersey, one of our first big projects was doing solar arrays on 25 different faith-based sites. And what I learned was that what renewable energy companies or any power company needs more than anything else is long-term certainty in government policy. Because without an understanding of what the tax landscape and the tax policy and subsidies policies are going to be like, it's very difficult to make long-term investments in renewable energy. And so what HR1, the one big ugly bill, did was to terminate the clean energy tax credits. And essentially what happened in the months following the passage of HR1 is that solar company stock prices dropped between 27 and 60%, because it was very clear that they weren't going to be able to do anywhere close to as much business as they had been before this bill was passed. So you see a huge loss in terms of the renewable energy sector. And also, living in New Jersey, as I know a number of people on the call do, the executive orders terminating offshore wind development or forbidding offshore wind development off the Atlantic coast also represented a big level of harm to climate progress. That wasn't addressed in the legislation, but it also was a huge part of the negative trajectory that we're on. Households lose a lot of clean energy incentives, and so do electric vehicles or clean vehicle tax credits. They just were simply sunset, and they ended at the end of last year. I have always thought that energy efficiency was so inoffensive that no one would be against it, but I was wrong. And the level of perversity, I would say, in terms of what's going on with this is difficult to fathom. Now, on the other side of the ledger, what you see is fossil fuels getting cheaper access to public land. So, one, federal lands, which are public lands that belong to all of us. Traditionally, when coal and oil and gas companies have gotten permission to drill on public lands, they have to pay a royalty to the federal government. And what HR 1 did was it substantially lowered that royalty rate. So it was essentially saying to the industry, to the fossil fuel industry, use public land to dig up fossil fuels, but pay less for that. And that's a subsidy by any other name. I mean, that's what it represents. And you saw this particularly with coal. And I used the word perversity a few moments ago intentionally, where you see the coal royalty rate dropped to a ridiculously low level. I didn't look into figures to see if coal mining is, entering a sort of second childhood with this, or, sort of entering a mini boom phase. But the spirit behind this is just so deeply misguided. And so that you see those problems, and I think that fossil fuel advocates love to talk about how deeply dependent on subsidies renewables are. The fossil fuel industry receives far more subsidies by a factor of 7 to 10, depending on whose research you look at. And I think it's very important to say that this isn't, the government stepping aside and letting the invisible hand of the market sort it out. It's the government putting its heavy hand very firmly on the scales and deciding which way energy supplies are going to be developed in the United States. The good news is that this law, HR 1, can be repealed, and previous IRA and other provisions be reinstated. Congress is able to do that. And that's why we think that this is, frankly, in addition to morally the right thing to do, a very strategic approach, because you get an awful lot done by repealing one awful piece of legislation. There've been some people who've said, oh, well, there's, a no tax on tips provision within the one big, ugly, beautiful bill. Do you want to get rid of that? And the answer to that is, if there happen to be a few positive things that should be left behind, it's incredibly easy for Congress to do that. But the bill the vast majority of the bill is just not aligned with moral and religious values. Another piece of the picture, there's a lot of talk now, obviously, about data centers. And the other thing that's difficult to fathom about HR 1 and its stance towards renewables is that it's going to lessen the power generation, the electricity generation capacity of the country at the very moment when demand is rising. Again, I know back from earlier Greenfaith days that energy demand used to proceed in a very predictable, modest rate of increase kind of manner. And that really is out the window now with the onset of data centers. So this is a time when, if we ever needed more renewable energy, especially because its price has come down, now is that time. But HR 1 has eliminated that or largely eliminated that as a possibility. So I'll finish just with a couple of rhetorical questions, which I think are obviously things that all of us care about. And all of you can not only fill in the answers with these, but cite any number of Jewish texts that will, that stand behind the answer to these questions. And we think with the Covenant for Our Future campaign that the government should use resources of current generations to make the world a better place for future generations, not a worse place. And we happen to think that that's a pretty non-controversial argument, and that there that's something that just ought to be brought to the attention of congressional reps. So Mirala has put the website link for the Covenant for Our Future campaign in the chat box. I'd encourage everybody to sign the covenant. We're close to 1,000 people of faith and religious leaders signing on, which is great. And we've got so far about 40 or 50 different Covenant for Our Future actions and activities taking place. This is actually the very first one that's kicking off our extended creative date keeping week of action, which technically runs from the 23rd to the 30th of August. We wanted to do it at this slightly odd time of year, both to be out in front of the Jewish holidays, but also in front of the sort of post Labor Day campaign advertising maelstrom that hits, because we think it's very important to set a moral tone going into this election cycle and then carrying over into future ones. So I'm very glad to answer any questions or hear any feedback. But it's a good campaign. We've got Jewish, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist, Unitarian, Christian participation. We've got, just to drop a few names, in addition to Jewish Earth Alliance, we've got Justice for All, which is the leading Muslim advocacy group in the country, on board. We have Hindus for Human Rights, which is a fantastic Hindu organization, as the lead Hindu partner. The Leadership Council of Women Religious, which is the largest national association of nuns, Catholic nuns, NUNS, not the NONES, but the NUNS is on board. Unitarian Universalist Social Justice, Unitarian Universalist for Social Justice is on board. Several different Buddhist Global Relief, and also the Shambhala Buddhist Touching the Earth Collective. So at any rate, we're excited, and we really do believe that we can influence the debate about what Congress ought to be standing for in the coming 3 to 4 years by taking a consistent principled stand. This law has the dubious distinction of being both immoral and unpopular. And so it's our job to make sure that Congress doesn't forget that, and that they do what they should, which is to repeal it and reinstate or strengthen previous protections for the well-being of people and planet alike. So many thanks, and I'll pipe down, and glad to, and the question about how does a bill get repealed, we've looked into that, and the interesting thing is there's a vote. It can be repealed, and then oftentimes if a bill is repealed, there's a repeal and there's additional text about a reinstatement of certain provisions, because you have to have that. Just because you repeal something doesn't reinstate what the bill may have gotten rid of. So there's a sort of repeal and reinstate process.
Well, thank you, Fletcher. That was very concise and very informative about the project, and goes right along with our principle that we started this whole Jewish Earth Alliance about, was the moral imperative of climate change. Can we get a veto-proof majority for repeal? Mark is asking that. Do we need 60 votes to repeal, or do you have any ideas?
My understanding is that a simple majority would do it.
Simple majority.
We're in the process, because it doesn't happen very often. We're in the process of doing research about a number of the different technicalities of this. But what I do want to say is that I think that from a narrative, we all know, if we look at how the far right used repeal strategies, they used it very successfully, both as a movement building mechanism as well as an actual legislative strategy, both with the Affordable Care Act and with the Inflation Reduction Act. And they and so I think that it's important to think about this campaign both from a movement building perspective. The more we talk about this, the more people learn about the role of the federal government, and very few people think the federal government ought to be cutting healthcare and food stamps, or excuse me, SNAP benefits. So I dated myself there. No.
Yeah, that's okay. Let's see, we had a question about what impact can states have? Elliot Rabin from New York is asking, for example, California has announced new incentives to keep the state on track for climate goals. So do you have some insight
I
about?
think Yeah, I mean, I think strong state leadership always matters. I mean, here in New Jersey, where I live, we're trying to get the Make Polluters Pay Act passed, and California has that legislation also, albeit at a much earlier stage of the. So, I mean, I think there's strong state legislation, but in this particular case, states are suffering badly from HR1 because they are they have lost revenue
Programs are
for
cut.
SNAP
Yeah.
benefits. They've lost healthcare revenue. Ironically, even some of the red fossil fuel producing states are getting hurt by this because they're getting less royalty payments from. The states there are a lot of state governments that are very unhappy about this legislation. And we all know that when multiple states speak up, that often is a precursor to federal action.
Yes, yes, definitely. It becomes a role modeling for national legislation. Mirala had said we need to make sure that state legislators are not held by anti all of this politicians, and that yes, and so that every election is very important. Interesting that Denver, Colorado, from Susan Farber said a former coal mine is now a site with solar panels for a local electricity grid. So let's see, do we have any other questions here? What are we not? Local news has been put in data centers. Okay, well, data centers is coming up. Jack wants me to mention that August 28th is a pilgrimage for climate and immigration justice that begins at Federal Plaza at 10 a.m. and makes several steps en route to what's the MDC, Jack, in Brooklyn? And
That's the Manhattan Detention Center, or Metropolitan Detention Center, I think it's called.
Okay. And Mirala is lobbying Maryland senators virtually with people of other faiths to repeal HR1 in the week of action. After doing so many Jewish Earth Alliance lobby days, it was easy for me to organize this. Why not do the same in your state? So she's appealing to all of our leaders, our state leads, to ramp it up and to ramp up lobbying and not let that just pass by, and work on the covenant with the same people, with some of the same people.
One thing
What is
I'd
Diano promoting? Susan's asking about Diano. We are doing a voter calling in November, I believe. Not in November, October with Diano to phone banks. So they are mostly working on elections with phone banks. I'm sorry, Fletcher, I interrupted you.
No, not a bit. So, I mean, two quick things. One is, I think that the phone banking is essential. Two things really help drive a voter turnout. One is the persistent get out the vote efforts that you were just talking about. Another is voters' passion and a sense of what's at stake in an election. And this, I think, talking about this legislation helps remind people what's at stake. There's a ton of research that shows that if you want to protect democracy in the face of an authoritarian upsurge, what you don't do is talk about protecting democracy. You talk about the way that the current authoritarian government is making life worse for people in very concrete ways. And that's what this bill does, is it makes life measurably worse for millions and millions of people. So I think it's a really important reminder on that level. The other piece is that I really do, because we're seeing this already, and we thought this would happen. There is an appetite for making this a prominent feature of the political debate within the next couple of years. And I think that I really truly believe that religious communities, given the moment that religion is having in this country, 10 years ago, I remember very firmly how many bright liberal secular elites were convinced that 10 years from now religion would be dead. Well, clearly religion isn't dead. And I think that there is now I know that there is a real hunger for seeing religious leadership that stands for the common good and for the future of the planet. And I believe deeply that this campaign gives us a chance to make clear that that's what we're about and that that's what we're for in a way that is beautiful and absolutely necessary.
We're always asking, when Barack asks, are there any Republican members of Congress that you know about who are on board to repeal it?
Not yet, but there will be. And the reason that there will be is that there are a number of, while they're a bit of a shrinking population, there are enough swing state or swing district Republicans whose districts have been hurt badly by this legislation, by this law. And so, they will be, and let's be clear, before the law passed, there were at least 12 Republicans publicly on record opposing the legislation. So they got, through the political process, they got phone calls from different people and they stepped back supposedly into line. But we know that this is not popular legislation. It took a huge amount of arm twisting to get it passed. And so this is, I think that there is a very real chance that, and look, the portions of the bill related to climate are, for the most part, apart from in oil states, fossil fuel subsidies are not popular. They're usually considered dull as anything, but they're not popular. And the renewable energy and tax credits and the tax credits for electric vehicles really are pretty popular. So there's a way in which this is a very progressive thing for Congress to do. And also not that risky, because
is the target dates, is it to work on during the lame duck or after the election, or waiting till it depends on the election, I guess.
We're doing right now, we're focused on the week of action coming up. We will do some work during lame duck. Really, we see the most important period of time is sort of early 2027 through the election season in 2028, because that's the opportunity to really put this front and center in there'll be a period of time, I think, in the first half of 2028 during the primary season, when there's a chance to put this on the radar screen during primary election season. But there will be lots of opportunities to do that beforehand. We've seen already that there's been an upsurge of media reporting on the negative impacts of this legislation. And those studies will continue. And it'll certainly continue on the climate side, because the potential benefits of the IRA were quite well documented. So I think that, we feel that, we want to make our voices heard now. The midterm elections will happen, but after that, it's time to get back to work.
Yeah, to build a foundation and build relationships. That's our goal as well.
Yeah.
Right.
And Dr. Sepinwall, we can definitely help you. We've got on the 27th of here in New Jersey and the 27th of August, we've got a multi-faith event focused equally on the Make Polluters Pay in New Jersey legislation and this Covenant for Our Future campaign. So I'll send Meryl info about that, and